So cool. So
Can we talk about your nails for a second?
Yeah, let's talk about them. Boom.
Did you do them yourself?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes, I did. If you get real close,
it's so impressive.
Shanky. Thank you. So I have been doing my own nails for a long time because I pick at them and then I get bored of the color and I change my nail polish color like every week. And so I refuse to pay. And so because of that, it's like a therapeutic self-care ritual. And it's probably, I'd say, like the girliest thing about me. I try to get dolled up when I'm going on camera, but it's the one thing that, like, if I don't have nail polish on, I feel kind of weird.
Totally.
So
I feel that way about my eyebrows. Like if I don't get my eyebrows waxed, I feel like
who are you?
Yeah, like I start questioning everything about myself.
Yeah, I've met some producers that for them it's like they have those like long acrylic nails that are really like fun and funky.
Yeah.
One, how do you do get anything done? And they're like,
totally.
I don't know, but if I don't have, it's like if I have those nails on, I know I can handle anything life throws at me.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm like, hey, everybody's got it.
It's their armor.
It is. It's their armor. So yeah, I think this is. But thank you. I love nail polish and nail stuff. It makes me very happy. It's like I've
been like binge watching. I don't really know what that term means actually. Like I realized I said that the other day, and
binge watching.
Yeah, like I don't like I guess I sort of learned that it means actually you finish it in one sitting, which is not what I've done. But I've been watching normal people, and I know, oh my God, we could talk about that. I could just talk about it for like hours.
You finished it.
No, so I still have 2 more episodes. But right now, what's sort of tripping me out is like last night when I was watching, they're like talking via Skype for like 2 episodes.
Yes.
And she's wearing like a black turtleneck and she has bangs.
Yes.
And, and like her nails are done. So I'm like, are you like pulling inspiration?
Marianne. Okay, here's legit. I'm not even kidding you. I took Marianne's photo. I binge watched. I literally watched it in one sitting. Normal people, finished it, started immediately again. And I sent the photo to my hairdresser and I was like, I want Marianne bangs. So this is, I'm not even kidding you. I'm not even kidding you. I will show you.
Oh my God.
I swear to God. So this is my Marianne in Sweden look.
Yes, in Sweden, yes.
When she's in Sweden. So that's what I was going for. Oh my God.
Oh my God. Like, I got the reference.
Thank you.
It's exciting.
I'm like channeling her. I'm pretending I'm 22 and
totally.
Like, oh, that show. When you finish it, please tell me, because I've been dying to talk about it with somebody.
Oh,
it's incredible. Anyway, so excited to talk to you because I'm working for the second time with Carolina Costa on a project, and was like looking up producers. I'm like, who do I want to meet and talk to who's doing awesome stuff? And then you came up and I was like, oh my God, yes, Carolina just worked with her. Let me reach out to her, and boom, boom, boom. So
I love it.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you reached out.
Yeah, no, thank you for taking the time. So I guess, take us to the beginning, just your origin story. Like, who are you? Where did you come from?
The beginning of life.
Yeah.
I have a really like strange like trajectory of becoming a producer. So I was like, as a kid, I was really into watching movies. Like anything that could like take me out of my life for 2 hours was like a gift, right? It was almost like, for me, like watching movies was almost like a religious experience. And I watched a lot of like, sort of weird to follow up a sentence that said religious experience with what I'm about to say. But like, I was watching a lot of like John Hughes movies. Feeling like misunderstood in my room, Yeah. And I wanted to be like, I wanted to create like John Hughes content, like whatever that means, right? For like my generation. Like whatever the fuck that meant, right? Or can I swear? Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Totally.
So I had like gone to like a summer camp that was like for like performing arts. So I was like, well, maybe I can like be an actor. And like,
Where was this?
It's called Stage Door Manor, and it's in the Catskills.
Okay.
there was a movie once made about it called Camp, and it's like everything you could ever think about like at a performing arts summer camp is like this camp.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
It's awesome. But so I was like, okay, well maybe I can like be an actor, or like I played the drums at the time, so I was like maybe I can like use that somehow. But anyway, what I ended up doing, like in the middle of my sophomore year in Boston, I basically like, I said to my mom, like, I'm like done. Like I'm gonna finish high school and move to California, and like make John Hughes movies. I know. And she was like,
what?
So my mom was like, okay, cool. That like sounds great.
Oh.
Like for real. Like she was very, look, if my 16-year-old ever came to me and was like, I'm dropping out of high school and I'm moving across the country, I'd be like, you're out of your fucking mind. Like you are not doing that. Like there's no way you're doing that.
Yep.
But she was very like, I don't know, like I never went after my dreams. Like you should like go after yours. So I moved to fucking California. Like I didn't know anybody at all. And I moved here and I was like 16 and a half. And I played the drums, right? Like I was saying earlier. And so I got this job at a music store on the Sunset Strip. And they were like one of the only places that would hire someone that wasn't 18. So I was like working on the Sunset Strip, playing the drums. Like I had all of LA as a playground at 16 with like a fake ID, doing all kinds of dangerous shit. Like looking back, I'm like, oh my God,
it's
I can't
insane.
believe
it's
I'm
really
like
insane. And you probably thought you were so grown and like knew stuff, of course.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like, yeah. But so someone came into the drum shop and was like, I need a like drummer, like a female drummer for like a commercial, for like some like high school like or like college like scholarship commercial, and I like happened to be in the drum shop, so I like auditioned for this commercial and I ended up like getting the commercial. And then I sort of ended up becoming this like person that was like in like commercials as like a drummer, but then like also as like a high school student. And like, anyway, it's very embarrassing. But so, but when I was on set, I looked around and I was like, okay, like producers, like they're like running shit, like ADs seem to be doing something that's like important, like, all right, yeah, like I want to, the producer seems like they're the boss, like I feel like that's what I want to do, but I had absolutely no way in. So I was at a bar, I was at the Abbey when the Abbey was cool.
What year was that? Because it hasn't really been that cool since I've been here. So
2004.
Yeah, see, I moved here in 2006, so I think I missed the boat.
Oh, so you just missed it.
I just missed it. I got the tail end. There were some cool moments, but yeah, it's definitely no longer.
No one goes there anymore, right?
I know. That's what I've learned. Yeah, it's kind of like, well, especially now, but yes. Like, I think the last time I went was sometime last year, and it was a terrible experience.
Really?
Like, yeah, it's just crowded, and like, now they sell pastries there. It's very confusing place.
And the tables and the glassware are like plastic now. Like they used to be like a nice place.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyway.
Gone downhill, but yes, 2004, good old days of the Abbey.
I think 2004.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I met this woman who was a first AD, and I just lied to her. Like I was like, I'm a second AD. You should hire me if you ever need anybody. And she called me like 6 weeks later. Yeah, I know. She was like, I'm doing this like non-union music video. I think it was a music video. Anyway, she was like, I need a second AD. Can't really pay you anything, but like, do you want to do it? So I was like, yeah.
You're like, of course.
So for sure. So I like got to her office on the first day and she was like, open up Excel and build the call sheet. And I was like, what's Excel? Like I had no idea what I was doing, like none, you know? but I got sort of lucky. She sort of like respected it somehow. Like I don't, she sort of was like weirdly like charmed by it or something.
She was impressed by the hustle. She's like,
I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. Or she just like felt bad for me. But I worked for her for like a year, and we worked on all of these projects that frankly had like incompetent producing teams. So you would like get to set and there like wouldn't be a generator, or we'd be like shooting somewhere and they like wouldn't have a location permit and it would get shut down, or like the actor like wouldn't have a long form to sign, or just like all of these things. So I sort of like slowly started like doing it like on these projects. Like I was like, oh, like I'll figure out how to get a generator. Like I'll figure out how to pull a permit. Like you don't know how to do it, I'll figure it out. And I sort of slowly started like doing it. And then my friend wrote this play, and I saw the play and I loved it. This was someone else I also met at the Abbey, actually. Strange.
Interesting. So
I know.
Sam's career brought to you by the Abbey.
By the Abbey. Being gay and young in Hollywood. No,
yeah.
So I saw the play and I was like, this is fucking awesome. And it's sort of like a gay John Hughes like story. So I think that you should make it into a movie. And I like know how much this shit costs now. Like, I think we can make this movie for like 150 grand. And we basically did. We like made this movie for like no money.
Yeah.
And the movie like turned out pretty good. And we like sold it to like MTV and we like won an award at Outfest. And so from there, I just kind of started like trying to do more of that, like looking for scripts or filmmakers that I like really believed in or really felt like that voice needed to be in the world, but couldn't get their things made.
Well, what gave you the confidence to look at that and go, I don't know how to do this, but I'm just going to figure it out, and it's going to cost $150K, and I'm just going to, limp my way to success. Like what is it about you that you just had this confidence? What was it? What's the secret?
That's a good question. I think with youth comes ignorance, and like I just I think I just thought if I act like I'm confident, I'll be able to figure it out. I guess a little bit of that is like I had to figure out how to like live in LA at such a young age, and like so, but I don't know. That's a really good question. Oh, my wife is bringing me a coffee right now, which is great because she just asked me a personal question. I don't know how to answer it.
What was the rest of the question?
The question was, why did I have the confidence to just figure it out?
Yeah, like when she started her career, what gave her the balls at the ripe age of, I don't know, what were you, 20 at this point?
I was 21. Yeah.
21. Yeah, you're a wee babe. So then how do you
totally?
You know what I mean? Like, because I get it because I'm wired very similarly, but
yeah,
it's like such a responsibility, right? To say
totally
you're gonna lead all these people down this path when you really don't know how to do it. But what I find fascinating about most producers I've had the opportunity to talk to is that there's something innate in them that they just somehow knew they were gonna figure it out and it was all gonna be okay. And I think it's like, in a way, we're all cut from a similar fabric, and I'm just like fascinated by it. And then the kinds of people and the personality types that are sort of like mesmerized by the chaos that is this business, that is producing specifically, and then just having the gumption to say, I don't know, but I know I can find the answer. You know what I mean? It's fascinating.
I really get off on people telling me that something can't be done. Like, I really love it. Like, I love being told, like, you'll never be able to do it like that, and then proving them wrong. I don't know what that is. It feels like something like I just have like a problem with authority, and I'm always like fighting against them or the system or something. But I think, you know, honestly, like in that particular case, there wasn't a lot of, I was like struggling at that time, like personally with like, am I gay? Am I straight? Like, who am I in the world? Like, like sort of everything that you sort of like, you know, reckon with when you're like in your early 20s. But I really felt like there wasn't anything out there to watch for people like me, right? Like I really was like, I saw this opportunity in this play, and the writer's voice like spoke to me in such a profound way that to me it almost felt like not getting it made was like doing a disservice to like the world. Like and also I think because they were like my friends, the pressure wasn't as high. And also I think a little bit like you really are kind of ignorant when you're younger. Like I sort of thought, because I had just been doing these like smaller movies and figuring it out, like I was like, I can do anything. It turns out like that's not true, and I failed so many times at so many things. But you just kind of don't it's like kind of like, you know, when you're like a kid and you're skiing and you just sort of go and you don't really think about like the outcome. In a way it was sort of like that. Like I just kind of, you know.
Anyway, so you produced that movie. No, you did. You definitely did. So you produced that movie, and it goes on to have some success. You said it premiered at some festivals. It seemed like it got you some attention, right? Especially at that time. Like I think getting films into festival was much harder, I feel like. It really was based more on merit. Now it's like a little more political, blah, blah, blah. But so then that experience, did that experience then solidify for you, okay, like this is a producer, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
Yes. So for me, that experience was like, it made me want to do it again. You know, it made me want to do it again and be more involved, like from the beginning, sort of. But yeah, I was pretty certain at that point after making that movie, or maybe the next movie, that I was like on the right path.
Yeah. And so how would you define a producer?
Oh God. Well, there's so many different types of producers, right? I mean, for me, I'm a sort of like, the only way I can describe it is like, I really believe in like singular vision filmmaking, and that you have to protect that vision at all costs, which isn't to say that you don't engage, or that I don't engage in like debate with that filmmaker, or like give like strong like creative like discourse. But for me, producing is like, I'm a very hands-on, nuts and bolts kind of producer, meaning like in my experience to date anyway, I'm usually very involved, like reading early drafts of a script or an idea and kind of giving different forms of notes or development, and then sort of seeing that all the way through to like, how do you putting a budget and a schedule and a plan into place, and oftentimes raising the money from scratch or taking it in somewhere. And then I'm the kind of producer that's usually like on set every day, sitting with the director. And then I'm usually the kind of producer that's like very involved in edit and post, and then seeing it through to delivery. I don't think all producers are like that.
Right.
But for me, that's like been my experience. Which isn't to say that I don't sometimes wish that I could take more of a backseat on certain projects, but I love being the sort of like partner to the filmmaker, and giving the filmmaker the space to get their vision onto the screen and into the world.
Yeah. Well, you sort of, because you did the AD thing for a while, it seems, from your IMDb/bio, and then you kind of went, how accurate is IMDb? Let's
totally
like,
right.
How representative is that? But but you were in post for a long time, it seems, before you kind of jumped over into the beginning of the process. And so, talk a little bit about that journey and how that.
For sure.
I think that's what's made you this kind of producer, right? Because you kind of got to see this side of it, and then
yes I mean, it's sort of like, for me, like, knowledge is power. I never had access to like tons of money, so I never had the ability to be like, oh, I can like raise $5 million and make a movie, right? So my only way in and up was actually like doing the physical work. So I was, as you say, yes, I was second ADing a movie, and the producer of that film, it was the first film she was producing, and she actually like made her living as like a post supervisor, post producer. And right after that film, she basically was like, she offered me a job. She was like, I'm going to start a new company. You should come work with me. I want to produce movies, but I also do post, and I can like teach you post production. And so I right after I made, or like right as I was making The Four-Faced Liar, I also sort of like started post coordinating for this woman, Louise Runge, who I would like credit to anything that I do that's good professionally is because of her. So she she sort of like took me under her wing, and I was her post coordinator. And
will you just define just really quickly what a post coordinator does for the listeners?
Yeah. So similar to a production coordinator in that you're like sort of like logistical, like overseeing the post process. So, well, normally like a post supervisor would sort of be the top, and then I would report to that supervisor. But things like creating like post calendars, like how long you're going to be editing for, how long your director's cut is, how long you're going to do like post production. So like color and sound design and composer and scheduling ADR and making sure that the visual effects get dropped into the color, and then the color gets output and turned over to the soundstage, and then eventually like looking at whatever the delivery schedule is from the sort of distributor, and then helping to get those elements there. So it isn't really like hands-on technical, but it's like using the sort of technical side of your brain. But so I was her post coordinator, and then we basically like ended up starting a business together where we would post supervise movies. So she would like post supervise a movie, I would post supervise a movie. We would like hire a coordinator under us, and that's how we would like make a living. And then we would try to produce movies on the side. So there were times where Louise and I would be like post supervising like 6 films at once, and also producing a movie, which means for like 8 years, Louise and I did nothing but work. Like it was insane.
What was that? I mean, how much of a toll did that take in other areas of your life?
I can't believe that I'm married with children. Like, and I understand why my wife has so much resentment towards me, because all I did was like work for years. Yeah, it was.
I mean, talk about that a little bit, because I think the impression that sometimes people get is like, oh, you're just opportunities and you're working nonstop, but there is a cost to it, right? There is like a decision you have to make, and it comes at the expense of other areas of our lives sometimes. And so was that a struggle for you, or were you like, I just want to go hard for this amount of time and then I'll shift my focus to this other thing?
So the truthfully, like, my real answer to that is I didn't even really think about it until like 4 months ago when we all got locked in quarantine.
Oh my gosh.
So I mean, look, I think I made a choice to be the kind of person that put my career and like work ethic above everything else. Not in like an egotistical kind of way, like, but I was just very, I mean, the truth is I am a complete workaholic. Yeah. So I think I missed out on a lot of fun stuff that you do when you are in your 20s, when you're not working 14 hours a day. So at the time, I didn't think about it because I just kept my head down and I was like, I'm building something. Like, you have those like ridiculous goals when you're like 23, like, I'm going to win an Oscar but in 10 years and I'm going to run a studio and like all that shit. and I thought, like, who gives a fuck about friendship? And like, I don't need to like travel the world. And then you like wake up 10 years later and you're like, oh my God, all I've been doing is like working for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't I travel the world? I mean, I've traveled a bit, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
I used to have a lot of like judgment for people who like I looked at and thought like, where's your ambition, right? Like, why are you just like being like a lift attendant at a ski resort? Like, do something with yourself, right? Yeah. And now I would do anything to go back and be a lift attendant at a ski resort. Like, I would love that, like, more than anything, to just be like, that's how you like form who you are in the world, and you're like open to experiences and people, and like, life isn't just about work. But it's taken me a very long time to get there, and the truth is I'm like not even there, because all I do still is really work, and it's still a huge issue.
But I think it's but I think it's like a process, right? Like everything else, and you cannot expect to change a behavioral pattern or a thought pattern you've had your entire adult life overnight. Totally. Like, that's just not going to happen. And I also think that there's something to be said about, you obviously take a lot of pride in what you do and the work that you're creating, and being a part of the conversation of being a filmmaker and putting out good work. And so when you feel, I think, tremendous pride towards the thing you're working towards, it's hard sometimes to like, I have this metaphor often that it just feels like I'm on a roller coaster, and every time I get to the end, I'm like, okay, I need to get off for a minute. I like have vomited all over myself, but the attendant doesn't hear me, so I just go again. And I have blinked, and like 10 years of my life have passed. Like, that's literally what I feel.
I love that.
Right? That's what I feel. And it's like, yes, and roller coasters are exhilarating. There are moments that are awesome, and then there are moments of terror. It's all of it. But I think it's like so hard to separate, especially when you come up the independent side, like who you are and the things that you're doing from all these other areas of your life. And part of why I think I started this podcast is similar to what you're saying, is I felt myself get a little lost in it, where I would blink and 6 months of my life have passed, and I'm like, totally, all I did was make this movie, and what a great thing to get to do, but there's got to be more than just this, and if this is all there is, and this is as good as it gets, and it's just more of this but bigger with more people and more money and more problems, then is this the life? You know, is this really the path? And so I have existential crises like probably, you know, once a quarter, if not more. So it's like, it's true, but I'm lucky enough that because I freelance, I do get some of these, you know, forced upon breaks of unemployment where I get to like, whoa, is this what I want to be doing? But I hear you 100%. It's life passes by so quickly and you're like, what the fuck, you know?
Yeah. So what do you think though? Is it what you want to be doing?
I mean, yeah, in many ways, it's like, you know, I moved out here 14 years ago to pursue this damn business. And I started as an artist, as an actor, and then found producing. And I think that I have worked so hard for my entire adult life. All of my 20s were spent invested and immersed in this, and not just this in the work, but also like trying to find a way in to the proverbial castle that is Hollywood, because I'm like an immigrant and like shouldn't be here. And I'm constantly like, I feel like I find a back door and I get into the kitchen and they're like, get out, you know, like I feel like I can never find sustainability, but so much. I finally feel like in the past few years, there's momentum, and I'm finally getting to like work at the level I want to be working at, collaborating with the kinds of people that are more visible and all of that. So it feels like it's definitely paid off, but I also feel on the other hand that if it all went away tomorrow, like I'd be like, okay, cool, I had a good run. You know what I mean? And I can take these skills and apply them towards something else. I just don't know what that else is. So there's like the one hand I feel that, but then I also feel very much in light of Black Lives Matter and everything that's happening in our world right now, we as storytellers have this tremendous gift and this responsibility to shape these conversations. And what an honor and what a privilege to get to be alive at a time when there is so much interest in other perspectives and stories of other, you know, and normalizing these conversations. And you look at movies even that were made 20 years ago, and sometimes I'm like, the way women were treated and written, and like it's fucked up, and it wasn't that long ago. No, you know, so it's like I don't want to give that up then, because I've worked my ass off to get to the place where now I get to be a part of selecting the kinds of stories we're gonna share worldwide. And so then I want to be here because I've earned my place here. So it's constantly a yin yang between those two, you know, where I'm like, fuck it, burn it to the ground, I hate it, and then like this is everything. So I feel a little bipolar with all of it, and I definitely don't have an answer. It's like depends on what day you catch me, and you caught me on a good day because I got my Marianne bangs and I'm feeling myself, I love it, you know. But I know. Like, and other days where it just feels like concrete walls that you can't get through. It takes tremendous effort and energy, and I have found so much of the producing journey is such a lonely solo journey, and that's why like I'm hungry for community. I've always wanted mentorship and I've never been able to find it, and I have realized that through this podcast, it's like every conversation is very selfish because it's like therapy for me, you know? And I'm like, all my peers are my collaborators, the people that are at my level, they're all mentoring me, like in these 1 hour conversations we get to have, and I get to hear my own experiences, my own conflicts, like reflected back towards me. And it's validating in many ways that it's like, oh, right. Like others feel this, others also struggle with this. And it helps me find a little more fight inside to keep going. So yeah, but that's like that's my monologue on that. But yeah, so it's and that's the thing too. Like I think people have this perception that producing is like hanging out with celebs and drinking champagne at the red carpets, and it's just very glamorous, and we know it isn't, and that it takes so much out of us and it costs other areas of our lives. And so whoever is listening who wants to do this, like I welcome you, but just be aware of what is required, really, because 10 years ago when I started, I didn't know, you know, and there are books, and yes, there are the different programs for producing, but no one really prepares you for all the different paths that exist under the umbrella of producing, you know. And so I hope through these conversations and sharing our journeys, others can hear it and it can guide them, and then other collaborators in the business, even if you're not a producer, if you're a writer, an actor, whatever, you're going to interface with a producer at some point. So you should know what we go through, what we think, what we feel. Full stop.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of like what a producer,
what are some of the misunderstandings that you have found on your end that you wish to demystify?
I think a lot, I think, and I don't know if this where you sort of put the blame for this, but I think a lot of sort of like vanity credits are given out at the producerial level.
Yes.
And it's a bit strange when you sort of have like a financier that has a producer credit who's maybe not producing, because and now there's the sort of PGA credit that you get to have next to your name, which is great. But I think producing is like, it's a real job. Like, you're usually like responsible fiscally to whoever is putting the money up, so you're like responsible to that person or that party or that studio to stay in and on budget and still to deliver something of the sort of like elevated quality that you've said that you would. And then there's the sort of like day-to-day creative, and then there's like the day-to-day physical production management. And it's very hard to find producers, in my experience, that can like do both. And I think a lot of people think that producers just like sit in a room and give notes all day, like read a script and then like give notes, and like that's like 4% of what a producer does.
Yeah.
There's the like, you are making sure your like script is in a shootable place, you're like hiring your entire crew, your department heads, which are hugely important, both like creatively and as like you want to, or if it's important to me to like build a set in front of and behind the camera that's like representative of the world we live in.
Yes.
And always sort of like being that voice to keep pushing that forward. You're like coming up with a schedule. I mean, it's basically like it's like setting up a little business every time you make a movie. You have to sort of like make sure that there's a budget and a schedule that you can sign off on and put your name on and say like, yes, I can stick to this and deliver it to you, the studio or whoever it is.
Well, while also managing a ton of different personality types, because that's the other thing. Like, it's not just finding the best person for the job and making it an inclusive workplace that is representative of our world, but then the extra level of like, well, these people also have to gel creatively and speak the same love language, so to speak. Otherwise, you're going to run into roadblocks at every step of the way that your production, right, that's going to impact all the other things you just talked about, the fiscal responsibility, all the other aspects of it. So it's so symbiotic in that way. And all of it has to work in perfect, it has to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Congruous? Is that a word? I don't know.
I know what you're saying.
But you know what I'm saying? to all move forward. Yeah. And it's insane that anything gets done.
It is. It's insane that anything gets done. And I think there's also a certain level of like, you want to protect the creative process and create an environment on set where like, it's not, things aren't just happening between action and cut, and you want to create a creative environment where something amazing can come out of it and protect that. But then you also want to be transparent with your creative team and filmmaker that, there are things sometimes you just can't do. And typically as the producer, you're the person that has to go in and sort of say like, no. And that's also always a really challenging.
Well, yeah. And then this misconception that people think producers always just say no, and they're all the money people and they're just keeping all the money. They have the money, or they keep the money, or they make all the money. And that's, especially in the indie film context, it's like, that couldn't be further from the truth. And the best producers, to your point, are the people that can say no, but, no, but how about this? Or no, but here's like, there's actually informed thoughts behind that. It isn't just 'cause.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody who thinks producers are making a ton of money, I am here to tell you, like, that is not true. Like, especially in the indie film space, like,
Yeah.
producer fees are like always the first ones to get cut. They're you're not paid in like, you know, the way like other people are paid like weekly, like you get paid, and that's just not how it works. At least in the space that I've ever been in, like.
Yeah, same.
I made I've made 1, 2, 3. I made 4 movies that I produced and got, you know, full on produced by. I made $0 on all 4 of them.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Of those 4, I then
made movies,
started making some money. Yeah.
Okay, so you were doing post.
Right.
How do you then go from the post side of things to looking now at like what you've done and some of the credits and where you're at? You seem to now have transitioned. You went into and did production for a while. You were the VP of production at Campfire, where I just worked with them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just did a doc with them. And then now you have your own company, it seems, and you're sort of more involved in the initial parts of the process as well, and not just production. So talk a little bit about that trajectory.
So well, I wish that 51 was my company, but it isn't, but that's okay. Everything about it is, I love it. I was, so when I was working in post, I had made The Four-Faced Liar, which was the first movie I made. And I was post supervising or coordinating a film for Lynette Howell, who's like a just absolute badass pioneer indie film producer. And she saw The Four-Faced Liar. And she was like, oh, that was like a pretty cute little movie. And she had a really small script, and said to me, and at the time, Louise Runch, who I was post supervising with, said to us, like, I have this small movie, you know, it should be made for like a few $100,000. I don't really make stuff like that anymore. Do you want to read it and see what you think? So we read it and absolutely fucking fell in love with it, and met with that filmmaker. And that movie turned into what is now this film called 28 Hotel Rooms, which was Matt Ross's first film that he wrote and directed. And then Matt went on to do Captain Fantastic. So basically, like, in a way, Lynette like opened a much bigger door for us. So we made 28 Hotel Rooms, which at the time was called But Beautiful. Like, She's So Bad for Me, But Beautiful. But that movie like takes place over 10 years, and it's like a couple that they're having an affair. So they're both married to other people and they have an affair with each other, and they meet up once a year in this hotel room. So we actually shot in like 28 different hotel rooms in LA and New York. And there's a lot of intimacy in that movie, a lot of nakedness. And we would be like shooting at airport hotels or like a nice hotel in Beverly Hills, wherever. And Chris Messina, who's in the movie, and Marin Ireland, who's the actress in the movie, would be like running from room to room, like basically naked, right? Because they'd be like, we're gonna do this scene, and then we're gonna do that scene, and like on our insurance it said like But Beautiful LLC, and we were like a tiny crew and often like wouldn't have catering, so we'd have to like order room service. So a few times we had like general managers like come in, like try to like shut it down because they were like, you're obviously making a porn film like in our hotel. And we weren't making a porn film, but yeah, so we made that, and that ended up going to Sundance, which we were very proud of. And then basically Marin, who's in 28 Hotel Rooms, said, hey, I read this script recently. It's by this filmmaker who's made a couple small movies. Anyone who's read it has said he has to make it for like a couple $1 million. Can you read it? Like, what do you think? So I read it and was like, no, like this, I can make this movie for like $200,000. So then we made that movie, and that movie, like, I don't know, like won the Austin Film Festival. And then from there we made another movie with that same filmmaker. And that movie premiered at Tribeca. And then we just kind of like started, we were like in this little group of like indie filmmakers, really like all thanks to Lynette. But then what ended up happening is like, then I started to become this producer that people started coming to with scripts and saying like, I have this script, you know, the last budget I did or someone did, it was like $8 million, but you know, I've raised like 2.5, 3, like, what do you think? And I just like always said yes. We were just always like, yes, we can do it. Yes, we can do it. And so we sort of ended up like kind of like line producing movies for people. But because Louise and I had such an understanding of like physical production and she had such an understanding of post-production, and then the two of us kind of like took our skill set together, we were able to be like, we'll line produce and post-supervise your movie, but like we want to be like EPs, or we want to be producers, you know?
Yeah.
And that was awesome, and it was wonderful experience, and we made something like, I don't know, like 8 movies in 10 years or something.
Wow.
But what ended up happening, so then we made Captain Fantastic, and Matt and Lynette Howell, who produced that film, really, really fought for me, because basically like I interviewed to be on that movie as like a line producer, and the financiers were like, no, like you've never made a movie of this size. And the reason why they really didn't want to hire me was because they were looking at the script and they were like, this movie should be made for like $12 million. And they had like $8 million. And I was like, it can definitely be made for 8. Like I can do it. And
yeah.
And Lynette and Matt really fought for me. And then I ended up making that movie with them. And from that point on, I had like Lynette Howell in my like sights. Like I was like, she is the only producer that I had ever worked with that understood physical production at a very detailed level and had like amazing creative instincts and filmmakers really trusted, and was super transparent. Like I had never seen that, and here this producer was in front of me that, and I was like, that's my goal. So literally from that point on, every decision I made, I went to Lynette. I like forced her into being my mentor. Like I was like, should I do this movie or should I do that movie? Or like, I think I'm going to make this small movie for Netflix. Like, what do you think? And when can I work for you? And she was always really like giving. And
that's amazing.
And then so I was like line producing. I don't even remember what the question was, but so I was like line producing, and I did, so Campfire. So Ross Dinnerstein, who founded Campfire, was like making a small movie for Netflix, and it was one of Netflix's first original films. It may have even been the first original film. And
is that Six Balloons?
No. So that was this movie called Rebirth that was like some, I don't know, small like horror movie. I know I'm like watching my words. And it was fucking tiny. Like I had just made Captain Fantastic and like helped on this movie Trumbo, and I was like finally working with real money.
Yep.
But I was basically a line producer, and I really was missing like development and creative process.
Yes.
And so then I saw with Ross, like I was like, okay, well, this might be an opportunity to like get in with Netflix. So I line produced that movie for Ross, and then Ross was like, you should come work at my company. And I loved working for Ross because he's literally the nicest person in the film industry. Like he has the most amazing like boundaries. He's like a dad. He's just like the best fucking person in the world.
Yes.
And I said to him as I was working there, for like however many years I was there. I was like, listen, I will stay here forever if I can make the kind of content I want. I will never leave you unless Lynette Howell comes knocking. If Lynette Howell ever appears and offers me a job, like, I will leave.
Yeah.
But no, Six Balloons was my like, so what ended up happening at Campfire, so we made these movies for Netflix, and my friend who wrote that first play that like we turned into a movie, she went on to become like a prolific like playwright and was like writing plays for David Mamet, and then like created a show at Amazon with Jill Soloway, and like wrote Splash for Channing Tatum, and she was one of my best friends, and she came to me and said, hey, I want to write this movie about you and your brother, and it'll resemble that night you had with him. It'll take place in 24 hours, and can I write it? And I was like, no, you can't, no, like, that's crazy. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, Marja, like, I think you're a director, like, you're writing, you only go up for writing jobs, but you want to be a director, so you can write it, and like, I'll trust you with that, but you have to direct it, and then I promise I'll go get it made. And I think she was a little bit like, oh, sure, whatever, bullshit, you'll get it made.
Yeah.
Then she wrote it, and I would like sit on her bedroom floor, and we would drink like Coronas, and she would like write a scene, and I would read it. And we ended up with taking it to Ross, dinner scene at Campfire, and we walked it into Netflix together, the three of us. And they bought it in the room, which was fucking amazing.
That's incredible, dude. Wow.
I took that to Lynette, and I was like, I'm making this movie with my best friend about me and my brother. I know that sounds crazy, but like, I want you to executive produce it, and if you like it, then I'm going to come work for you. You're going to start a company, I'm going to come work for you. And I think she was also like, yeah, sure, okay. And then the timing like really worked out. Like, it's so strange.
Yeah.
Lynette started a new company called 51 Entertainment, and then I made Six Balloons with Ross and Marja, and then I left Ross
and
to
went
go work with Lynette.
There. And now you've been there since.
Yeah, and I've been there since.
Yeah. And so is there an MO for the company? Because here in the bio, it says a platform agnostic filmmaker-driven production company. What does that mean? Like, it's fancy words, but like,
oh shit.
Because like, clearly, like, from IMDb, it seems like you guys really gravitate towards working with female writer-directors. You did, Tara Miele. Yes. Tara Miele, is that how you say it? Tara Miele. So Tara Miele's Wonder Darkly, and you worked with Brie Larson, you do Unicorn Store, and you're obviously working with her again. Like, so is that, talk about that.
So the name 51 Entertainment is representative. It represents that women make up 51% of the population. So we are very interested in tipping the scales and putting more women, or really like underrepresented voices, specifically in the storyteller position. So like, it's not necessarily for us about like making female content or like making it's really about like, let's see the world through the point of view of someone we haven't seen that world. So that could be a woman, that could be like a person of color. Like, it's really about, it's not that we're only working with women or sort of people of color, but we really would like more underrepresented voices telling stories. And the sort of like platform budget agnostic is really like, look, people say sometimes like, what do you want to make? And the truth is like, I think we just want to make like elevated content that means something. So like, sometimes people will be like, would you make a horror movie? And it's sort of like, yeah, like if it says something about the world, or like there's a deeper meaning to it, like for sure we'd make a horror movie. Like, So we are sort of like budget genre agnostic. Like, you know, we made, Tara's movie that premiered at Sundance. It's a very small movie that we made in LA for like not a lot of money, and it was just such a grueling shoot, but lovely experience. And now we're about to go make this like huge show for Apple. So we really are like across the scale, open to anything and everything, but we're very, 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 we keep a really small slate because it's a really small company. So we try not to like, we're definitely like not in the business of like just sort of like optioning material to sit on it. You know?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Makes total sense. I mean, so how do you, I feel like, you know, our industry has such a high barrier for entry for a lot of people, but especially women and people of color, and hence a lot of dismantling this thanks to the Black Lives Matter movement, which I'm so grateful is in existence. But how do you recommend someone level up in their career if there are these barriers, not just at the front end to get in, like even at the bottom level, but it feels like every time you're tear jumping within our own careers, it's like you can never prove yourself enough. It's like, oh, you've done this, doesn't matter. You won how many Oscars? You got to have another one. It's like it always, the goalpost keeps moving every time.
Yeah.
So how do you level up?
Well, here's the thing. I think like it's such a fucked up thing, right? Because it's like, how do I level up? And you know what? It's my responsibility. Like, it's like our responsibility. People who like that are like crewing up a show or like looking for creative department heads, like we need to be way more open and vocal and, you know, this idea that like, oh, it's going to be really hard to find an editor that's like a woman of color because they've not had the opportunity or they don't exist. And it's like, you know what, then fucking try harder. Not those people, not those editors, like me, people like me, like producers, directors, studio executives. Like we can't just be like out at protests and like Black Lives Matter and like posting shit on Facebook and Instagram and then not following through on that stuff.
Yes,
like
100%.
And I think that is really important. And I think people who are in positions of power have to be vocal and have to put their foot down about like having like walking the walk. I really do.
I think there's a lot of, even before Black Lives Matter, I was at Sundance too. I had a film premiere there and I attended like every, you know, sort of panel and brunch thing for all of the women and diversity. And I was like, this is awesome. We're here drinking champagne and talking about inclusion and diversity, but we all agree about it in this room. That's why we're here. And that's not the people that need to hear it. And while this is incredible to be having this conversation here, how are we actually doing this in real time in the real world? You know, like, because I don't see that, because we're all talking about it, but then we're looking at the statistics and it's like, how much more talking are we going to do if this is still the reality in 2020? Like, so I think it's like the micro tiny ways that we can actually go outside our comfort zones, to your point, and actually doing a little bit heavier lifting to find people, to give them opportunities, and to understand that a lot of times, they're not going to have the resume because no one's giving them the opportunity.
Exactly.
So you're going to have to take a risk.
Yes.
And give people this like initial hand up into these rungs so they can then soar from there. And
yes,
I think that's the only way. I think like, oh, mentorship, shadowing, that's not enough. Like we just need to give people the jobs and that's it.
And I really applaud people that make you, my wife was saying this to me the other day. She's a documentary filmmaker.
Nice.
And she was looking for an editor, and it was really important to her to have a female editor, and it was really important to the person that the documentary is about that the editor was female or and it got to the point at one point where my wife was like, fuck it, like I just can't find this person, forget it, I'll just hire, you know, Steve or whatever, like I really liked him. And the person the documentary is about was like, no, like, you just have to try harder, you know? And at the time, my wife was like, she was like so frustrated, even though it's what she wanted, right? Yeah. But she ended up finding an editor who she's now like obsessed with, and they've done like 6 projects together, and it's like her favorite editor of any editor she's ever worked with. Yeah. And it's like, if she wasn't forced so hard by someone who had the power outside, he never would have found her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like everything that's at arm's length. It's like, well, I'll just go with the team that's good and I'm comfortable with. I'll just go with those people. Yes. And I get that. I understand that, especially as producers. Like, when there's a shorthand, all of that stuff, there's so much value there. But I think that we're in a period of our industry where a lot of people are going to have to be a little uncomfortable for a little while to give other people an opportunity, because there's no other way.
Yes.
Right?
Couldn't agree with you more.
That's my MO. That's what I'm at least trying to do and create. But
what movie did you have at Sundance?
Sylvie's Love.
Oh yeah, cool.
The Tessa Thompson film. Yeah. It was the UPM on that. It was my first Sundance.
How was it?
It was great, but like great timing, because now like who knows when Sundance will be back the way the way it was. But it was insane, but it was good. It was like a really insane 4 days. But I did want to say we're at like at an hour, because that's what happens.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm down to keep talking.
It's been really fun chatting with you, though.
Yeah, I have a few more questions. So
okay.
I'm just saying, like, I just like to give people a heads up, so I'm not like, and that's our time, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I did want to get in a little bit with you on, you know, the challenges you faced along your path, right? Like the times when things weren't clicking, or you may have felt or experienced lows, and you were like, what the fuck am I doing? What's the point in doing this? How do I keep going? But clearly you found the strength to keep going, because here you are thriving in 2020. So will you speak a little bit to some of those experiences you've had and how you managed to stick it out?
Well, so a couple of things. So for me, like, it's interesting, right? Because I've had times where I've been like, you know, if I had gone to college, because like I barely have a high school degree, right? So like there are or a diploma. So there are times that I have thought, like, if I could go to law school, like, would I make it? Would I have made a different choice? Mm. And the thing with me is, like, I never really had anything to fall back on. Like, I couldn't really do anything else. Like, I didn't have any other skill sets. So for me, like, I sort of, and that might even be like a lie I'm telling myself. Like, you know, maybe I could like study and still take the LSATs. Like, I think you can do that in California.
Probably
like, you know, like, right. Like, so that might've been a lie I was telling myself to like protect me from leaving the dream I've always had. Mm. And I think also I just have like, you know, for me, like growing up, I had a real profound sense of loneliness, and I'm just not ready, or I was never ready to give up on making people less lonely. And I think ultimately, like, anytime I've ever thought like, should I stop doing this, or should I like look elsewhere? It's kind of always come back to that. And that's not to say that I won't someday be ready to like let go of it, but I just haven't been able to let go of that. And to me, the only way I can see making people less lonely is by being a storyteller and creating like content.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. But even when you have felt lonely, that's interesting that you have felt lonely, but then your solution to that feeling was to find a way to help others feel less lonely.
You know, I know it's so strange, right? Like, what the fuck is that about? I don't know. I have to ask my therapist.
It sounds very healthy. Like, of all the ways to deal with that, I think that's a good one. You know,
I think, I mean, like, I also have a very, very, very supportive, like, partner in life. Like, I've been with my wife for like 12 years. She's seen me work my ass off, and she's very supportive. Like, you know, she's kind of like been there for me in moments where I'm really sort of questioning everything.
Yeah.
You know, I have to say though, like if I was still line producing and like Lynette didn't give me this opportunity, or I never made Six Balloons, I don't know if I'd still be doing it, because I really wasn't getting my like creative like soul met, you know?
Yeah. I do know. I do know. Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I know exactly. Yeah.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of that transition right now, you know, where I came up physical producing and been line producing, UPMing, and I love so many things about it. But when I look into the future of what my life to be, it's not that. Like, I don't want to just do that. So I'm in the middle of my pivot right now of like, all right, I want to be more of a creative producer, and I have all the physical and I know how to do all that. That part is easy to me. And so now I want to reintroduce myself to people as a person who also puts projects together. Because I actually had that experience. The very first project I ever produced was a documentary called Autism in Love. And it was like one of those things, you know, very like similar to what you're saying. I just didn't know any better. So I was like, yeah, I'll produce it. I'll figure it out. I don't know. Well, I'll get it done, you know? And I was the capital P producer, and I did everything soup to nuts and struggled my way through and didn't know how to budget and use like no accounting software, you know, just like the whole thing was a hot mess. Totally. But like, but the beauty of it was I had no expectations, and that project opened so many doors for me. And then I was like, this is what producing is you do all of the things. And then after that project, I just got stuck just doing physical production. And I was like, well, no, but I want to be doing this part too. And so then flash forward 5 years, which is not that long, but still like, again, you know how fast time goes, that you're like, okay, if I don't start putting these things into motion, I'm gonna get stuck here. And I think there's a lot of people, and we need them, who love just line producing and want to just do that and have no creative, they just want to be the person. And I think that's fantastic. But I've always known in my heart that like, because I'm an artist first, like I need to have that to fill my well. And the podcast has been a sort of a one version and avenue to explore that, while we will know how long it takes to get anything made. So it's like, while I'm biding my time and pushing boulders uphill, I have this platform to talk to other people and keep myself motivated, you know, and encouraged through all of it. So so I totally hear that. And I don't know, I'm glad that you did, you know, I'm glad that you did, because it seems very clear to me that you're destined for this and you're meant to be here. And if like, I think if you had left to go do something else, I think you would have come back. I think you were like, nah, fuck this. I think you would have come back to it. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah.
So I think that's
awesome.
Kind
of you to say.
I mean, well, from what our conversation, I obviously don't know you, but just from that, and obviously with Carolina and her,
it's because we talked about normal people in the beginning.
I think so. I think that's
it's because we talked about that.
I think that's,
and I recognized your, you know,
in my bangs. Yeah, that's
your merit. Yeah, that's what it is. We have a connection.
Yeah, but before I let you go, my last question I want to ask you is, you know, if there's a legacy you hope to leave behind, you're so young, you're still the infancy of your career, but what would you want that to be?
Oh my God. I have no idea. I think it's so funny. Like, I actually find like a lot of women don't really think about like legacy somehow. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's why I like to ask it, because you should start thinking about it.
I guess I hope that I will have made something that's changed the way people think about the world somehow. I don't, you know, I think if you were like, I think I could say like, okay, I think if you asked me, like, what's your piece of advice? Like, I could answer that. But, like, what's my legacy? Or what do I want it to be? I have no fucking idea. I guess I want to be someone who's created stories that make people feel and think about the world differently than they might have walking into the viewing experience.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a great legacy. I mean, you're already working towards it, so I don't see why not. You know?
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for spending this time with me.
Thank you so much for asking me.
My questions, my deep questions.
Will you give Carolina Costa my love? Because I miss her, and I think she's the fucking best.
We are working together. We talk every day, so I will. It's fun to have two Carolinas in one project. But that must be hard. It's all good. She goes by Caro, I go by Carolina. We'll figure it out on set because everybody's going to be calling Carolina, and I will be like this the whole time. What? Oh yeah, it's not totally. Not there.
Yeah.
We did a short together, and it was like that, where I was like, what? Oh yeah, it was just like the whole time for 2 days. So I can't imagine what a feature is going to be like. But
that's fun though.
It's a great problem to have.